The economy did not contract as expected in May, but stayed flat after a 0.3% expansion in April. Stats Canada says its preliminary estimate for second quarter GDP points to growth of 4.6%, up from 3.1% for the first 3 months of the year. This has several big bank economists predicting that we'll see another sizable interest rate increase from the Bank of Canada in early September. Well, with us now to unpack the GDP, interest rates, consumer debt, and the labor market is Dr. Jack Mintz, economic and public policy expert. Dr. Mintz, welcome back to Forum Daily.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
So as we mentioned, the economy did not contract as expected, but instead it stayed flat in May. So can you unpack the significance of this for our viewers?
Well, I think we should remember the economy is slowing down. I mean, we can almost say that we've come to the end of the recovery, and the outlook, at least in the next while, is probably maybe some potential shrinkage in GDP after the spring. But certainly we're not going to be seeing the kind of growth that we've seen last year as we came back from the pandemic year in 2020.
And how does all of this relate to the issue of inflation?
Well, we still do have significant inflation. You know, job vacancies are very high. In fact, as much as there's a number of unemployed people in the economy, we have labor shortages. Lots of businesses are complaining about that, but it's resulting in higher wages to be paid, and the Bank of Canada is quite concerned about that. We've had some relief in terms of commodity prices lately. They've come off, but they are still relatively high compared to what they used to be. I mean, certainly when you go to the gas pump, it's less expensive today than it was a few months ago, but it's still, last time I looked, was about $1.70 a liter. So that's still way up from what it used to be. So people are still feeling the squeeze in inflation, and inflation is still continuing when you take out gas prices and food prices. It's still at a relatively high rate, certainly above 5%.
And to add to that, some experts are predicting another big rate hike from the Bank of Canada to get inflation under control. So what would that look like?
Well, I think we'll have to see what the Bank of Canada will do on its next round. You know, it certainly have had two aggressive hikes recently. You know, a point the last time, 0.75% the previous time. I suspect we're going to probably see at least 0.5 or 0.75 again, mainly because the economy is starting to slow down, and commodity prices are starting to come off. That I think it might take some pressure off big increases in the interest rate, but also the bank has indicated that it wants to see interest rates around 3.5 to 4%. We're roughly around 2.75% for the policy rate, and so there's still a little ways to go to keep raising interest rates.
And bringing this back home to our viewers, how do you expect a higher interest rate to impact consumers, especially those Canadians who are already carrying higher debt loads?
Well, interest rates are certainly going to put some pale on the economy in terms of slowing it down, and that could lead to eventually some taking some pressure off wage increases. Well, people have been looking at 9-10% interest rates lately, inflation rates, and their wages have only gone up 5%. So people's real wages have actually been cut over the past year, and it's unlikely that they're going to make up for it, given the way that interest rates are rising, which means that commodities are more expensive, so people are buying less of it. They're deciding to cut back on particular products, because they still have to pay for gasoline, they still have to pay for food. So some of the other things like leisure and travel, people will think about not buying less of because they're going to have to pay for the necessities that they need.
All right, Dr. Mintz, just over a minute left here, but jumping to the issue of the labor market right now, as you mentioned, job vacancies remain high across the country. So what can authorities do to help fill these jobs?
Well, I think there's not a lot that could be done in the short run, but I think the governments, are going to have to pare back some of the support that they give for people not to work. The two biggest decisions are often made by people deciding to leave the working force, like retire early, and the other one is whether to join the working force. For example, women and also men these days who decide who have been raising children and come back into the workforce. That's a good example. Or people who've been on these extended unemployment insurance benefits who are unemployed that could be working as well. And I think the governments are going to have to do further work in paring back some of the benefits that we provide, which has been quite liberal, actually, in terms of the 2020 year, where a lot of money was poured out to help people cope with the pandemic. But some of those relief programs have been slow to come off.
All right, Dr. Mintz, sounds like we've got a lot to keep our eyes on. Thank you again for joining us today on Forum Daily.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.